At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Weirding Way Media.
Welcome to episode 131 of the Filmumentaries Podcast. I'm Jamie Benning, your host. And on this episode, I'm talking with director Phil Hawkins, whose path into filmmaking started the old-fashioned way. He borrowed a VHS camcorder, he built cardboard sets and costumes, and he has a determination to recreate the magic of movies like Jurassic Park and Star Wars, two movies that have inspired him his entire life. Phil talks about how those early experiments, essentially his own version of film school, led to making short films, which in turn opened the door to commercial directing. From there, he built up the skills and connections to move back into narrative storytelling, making both indie features and larger scale projects, including, you might have heard this one, Star Wars Origins, the viral fan film that blended Lucas and Spielberg influences in a way that only a fan could. And more recently, Robin and the Hoods, which channels the heart of 80s adventure films like The Goonies and Explorers, as I say in our conversation you're about to hear. We also dive into how Phil works with actors, what he's learned from commercials about visual storytelling and managing big sets, and how he's carving a path towards studio-level films while keeping that DIY filmmaker spirit alive. So here's my conversation with director Phil Hawkins, and as always, I'll be back at the end for a bit more jabbering on. Phil, thanks for joining me. I know that I've been doing some research, of course, and I know that you didn't go to film school. I know that you didn't go to university. You didn't have a family member in the industry. So
no, all those things that they,
yeah, those are the things that you expect people to have to get into the industry, particularly the sort of nepotism one. So how did you go about finding your way in? What was your route in? You know, were you a kid that had a camcorder as a birthday present one time? What sparked it all off for you?
I wish I even had that. Get the tiny violin out for the working class kid from a council estate in Manchester. Firstly, thanks for having me on, because I'm a fan of the podcast, and obviously the filmumentaries you've done, I've poured over them, and you've had such legends on this podcast. So I'm trying not to be intimidated by the conversations I've heard previously.
Not at all.
But no, mine came from. Well, it just came from a love and obsession with trying to recreate the things I loved watching. So very vividly remember watching Jurassic Park for the first time, sat in the cinema, which is no longer there. And I remember leaping on my auntie's knee when the T-Rex appeared and being absolutely terrified that dinosaurs were back and real. But then logic setting in, going, but it's a movie. Like, how have they done this? I was probably Tim's age in that, so it's probably like 8. Yeah, 8 or 9. Okay. So like the sort of perfect age. The age that a lot of people on this podcast say they watched Star Wars in 77. Yeah. So I'm of the of the Jurassic Park and Spielberg generation. And I just became, and it's directed by Steven Spielberg at the end. I'm like, who is this Steven bloke? And why is his name on things that I love? And what is this directing thing? And this is obviously pre-YouTube, pre-internet, pre-everything, and which I've still got up in my on my shelf. There is I had the official annual of Jurassic Park for 1993.
Yes. I had that too.
and in that were all these behind-the-scenes photos that I used to just pore over and obsess about, like, oh wait, no, that shot's just the feet, and that bit's just the head, and this is how they've done this, and what's this CGI thing, and it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. So, in pure naivety, I thought, well, I can do that. Yeah. let's go make some films. So, this is where the tiny violin comes out. We couldn't afford a video camera or anything like that, so I used to clean a neighbor's friend's house and kind of run errands so I could use her very old like VHS camera, so I could start messing around with filmmaking. And then eventually my school at the time saw this kind of bubbling obsession of mine, and they managed to get I think it was a high 8 camera at the time, or mini DV if we're geeky with formats. High 8, yeah, not mini DV yet, because I remember digital blowing my mind. But I used to just try and copy the things I'd seen. I was a big X-Files fan, fascinated with that week by week, and obviously Star Wars, which I came to of the kind of VHS, the originals VHS generation, and then I finally owned that squeaky covered special edition. The silver one. It was very much by doing. I just kind of watched things obsessively and then tried to make my own version of them. So, for example, very early, I tried to make my own Star Wars film, but we didn't have visual effects. We didn't have anything. It was just and it was a bit of a spoof. So I kind of lent into the comedy of it. So, we dressed people in cardboard boxes and use the high school corridors as like parts of a spaceship. And
so you had willing friends then?
Willing / I would say they must have been willing, some of the things I made them do. And one of the actors who's in that, a guy called Alvin Adequate, is an actor now, and
cool.
We still work together and still laugh at our geeky early fan films. But that was essentially my film school, really. Like, I went into sixth form college, which is kind of the first sort of formal time I could learn media and film. And then thinking that, I'm going to be surrounded by all these like-minded, obsessive filmmakers that have been making films since they were 9, and then realizing that quite wasn't the case. And although it was great, and then I now had the tools and the non-linear editing, going from, I used to SCART cable my 2 VHS players.
Yeah, I did
to edit
too. Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Play and record, play. Stop. Yeah.
Play, record, play. Absolutely. But doesn't that, it makes you a great editor? Like,
it gives you an appreciation for it, doesn't it? Yeah. It gives, because like, if you made a mistake, it was sort of back to square one. Oh dear.
Absolutely. And it makes you understand the discipline of where to put a cut. And to this day that I do that when I'm editing, I'm kind of, I'll put the cut where it needs to be instead of throwing stuff down a timeline and, trying things out. And very much didn't quite do the splice film side of it, but through the kind of dangers of linear VHS or these kind of editing definitely made you really think about where the edit went. And so I just made tons of shorts and tried to get involved in as much as I could. I started working on uni students films, which for me at the time, I was probably 15, 14, 15, 16. These guys were like really old and mature and wise, to me. And we was just trying to be a sponge. It's just, it as my mum said, it kept me out of trouble. And it was just an obsession but a joy. Like that's the main stuff I remember from childhood. And to this day, like, I now do this as a living, and it's still play. It's still joyous to play and do these kind of things, but just with a bit more budget and a few more toys these days.
Well, the thing is, though, like you said, a kid from a council estate, the expectations of what you might end up doing, or the possibilities of what you might end up doing as a kid from a council estate. I'm the same, actually. I filled in the little survey. We had to colour in the little boxes to say what you like to do. And at the end, they said to me, you're going to be a telecommunications engineer. And I was like, what's that? And they said, well, you're going to climb up pylons and fix telephone lines. I was like, I don't want, but I don't want to do that, So, well, that is a bit of a high expectation, isn't it? So putting a lot of pressure on you. And I'm like, no, I want to do something beyond that, Did you have that same situation as well, where people were sort of ready to stamp on your dreams kind of thing?
Absolutely. But I think it was just a sheer kind of passion and, as I say, kind of naive optimism that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is all I can think about what I want to do. And probably in hindsight now, I feel really lucky that I discovered that bit of drive that set me on a good course to doing what I do now. And I don't know, well, I guess it's just watching Star Wars and Jurassic Park and these things that, the inspiration struck. But because it really pains me when young people are given that, or sort of said, oh, you can only amount to this, or, well, especially like in Manchester, it's like London was like going to another country. It was so far away. So the idea to go make films and stuff was sort of a really strange alien thing to people. But I loved it. I was obsessed with it, and thanks to a few teachers who I'm still in touch with, who really gave me the time and the kind of inspiration and the platform, I suppose, to grow and experiment. I think without that, I definitely wouldn't have been doing it as I am now. So it does take those key people in your life, I think, to go, actually, you know what? If you care about this and you're good at it, then go for it.
It feels like
because anything is possible.
Yeah, and it feels like there needs to be a real combination of all of those things, like you having the drive and the passion for it, having the right people to say, yes, you can do it. There's so many people that get to a certain stage in their life with a certain skill, particularly in the arts, where somebody goes, oh, you're not as good as this person, or you should give up, or whatever it is,
Yes.
I always remember just being told I was the second best drawer in my class when I was 10, and I was like, well, I need to stop then, because Daryl's much better than me, and I regret it to this day. If I'd have pursued that, then maybe I would have been
pursued it.
Yeah, but I think it's something to sort of recognize that films are made initially when you're young, and then there's another leap you make, isn't there, to go, maybe I could be involved in some way. So you went into sixth form, you had these supportive teachers. Did you have was there a camera that you could use in the school, or was it the one that you were saying that you cleaned this house? By that point there was equipment, and there was Final Cut Pro, and there was all these kind of things that was fairly new at the time. And I know sort of both of us, the teachers and I alike, were kind of figuring this out, and I'd figure something out and be like, hey, you can do this. They go, oh, great. Discovering it together.
Absolutely. And so I just made as many films as I could, because I no longer had to clean houses or wait until after school on a Thursday to use a camera, and got into submitting into festivals and that side of thing, which is the other bit of advice I give to young filmmakers is, even if you're not, even if because you sometimes make stuff and you're like, oh, it's not quite right, it's not quite turned out the way it can be, I'll just put it in I'll put it in a drawer, and it's like that that does nobody any favors, just get out there, get it seen and grow. So that's what I started doing kind of college, was sort of try and get out there a bit and submit these films and attend events and all this kind of stuff to just sort of figure out what a path was going to be. Because I think I sensed, well, I knew it was going to take a year out. God, we're going very much in the granular of my my life.
This is good. I love it.
I knew it was going to take a year out, and I again naively applied to the National Film and Television School, not really understanding that a lot of people go there after university, but obviously didn't get in. And then I got on kind of a BBC like mentor project, which eventually led to them giving me I think it was £1,000 to make a short film, which to me was massive. Yeah, absolutely massive.
Premium cardboard for this one, yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that's the thing that kind of led to I suppose a bit of serendipity of that film was showing it on a film festival night at the same time as a short film that I was an assistant on for some of these uni student filmmakers, and they were already in the industry kind of doing commercials, and they were like, hey Phil, we're shooting tomorrow, do you want to come be a runner? I was like, absolutely 100%, tell me where and when and I'll be there. and not to end the podcast right now, but the rest is history, so they say. Like, I walked onto that set thinking I knew everything I needed to know about filmmaking, and realized how little I actually knew about the way things worked, and was just, again, the kind of obsession, passion of seeing how a commercial shoot is run, the politics of it, just trying to be the best I could be in order to get on to the next job, and then the next job and the next job, and try and learn that way. And that's the way I grew up, essentially, in the industry. I never quite, I keep saying I'm still in my year out because I always said I would, but I started working up the commercials industry, basically. That was my entry in. But it's only after they'd seen a lot of these other short films and realized I'd already made tons of shorts, that they were like, we like this guy, let's bring him into our wing, let's train this guy up. And that was a great opportunity for me to understand how that whole world works.
Yeah, it's such a great film school going into commercial, because each one is its own little movie, isn't it? I remember I worked in London when I first started working, just in a boring government admin job, and I would see commercials being shot around the place, and I've always like lingered to see what was going on, because it was a lot of people involved in shooting a commercial, like outside down a little side road in London or something, and I was just always amazed at the amount of resources that got thrown at these things, and the fact that it is you have to create a story visually very, 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 very quickly. You sort of learn all of those key tools that a director needs being on set, I'm sure. And as being a runner, I always think there's sort of two types of runners. There's those runners who just think they're above it straight away, and those other ones who just do what they need to do the running bit, so that they can observe all of the other roles that are going on in the industry. Because we have runners in my bit of the industry, and I've seen some come and go. I've seen others become executive producers, directors, all sorts. Was that something you enjoyed about working on commercials, being able to sort of really dial in and see what each person's role was? Because it is a microcosm of a film set in a way, because you've got first AD and you've got director and producers there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great way of explaining it. I mean, before kind of falling into commercials, even a week earlier, if you said, "Oh, you're gonna end up being a commercials director," be like, "Who wants to direct adverts?" Like what? But then you realize, for everything you said, it's such a wonderful way of learning and training, and it's such high turnover. So, you might be shooting one commercial, you might be shooting a few commercials a week with some busy production companies, and they're all really different types of personalities in terms of directors and DPs, different logistics involved, different kind of clients and agency, different budgets. So it is a really kind of baptism of fire, to use a cliche. But I can see now why some of the greatest directors have come from commercials, and that what it does train you is that, as you said, that visual storytelling, and what are the most engaging images to kind of hook an audience in from the get-go. And there's a real skill in that. And obviously there's a whole psychology at play as well about what images mean to people, and seeing how different directors, because I used to assist a bunch of very different directors with different styles, and seeing what was important to them, and how they kind of sometimes got their way, or or held back in the political game of commercials, was a fascinating thing to understand and to try and wrangle with. That to this day, even on feature film narrative stuff, all that skill set is so important in dealing with studios, dealing with bigger personalities, dealing with cast, dealing with the kind of politics of creative negotiation. I find quite interesting. And everyone has very different ways of doing it, but commercials has definitely helped that thing. I'd say it's probably definitely helped get my way a bit more than maybe someone else that might just kick the toys out the pram. I very much attack it from a point of passion, enthusiasm, and story, rather than being a toddler, which some directors can be.
Yes. Because just as much as you're learning how to do things, you're also learning how not to do things, aren't you? Looking at people above you in this situation. So was directing always on the horizon for you, or did you ever consider like director of photography or editing? Or I mean, you've got some of those skills there in your tool set, aren't they, as a director? Because you're sort of editing mentally. You are a DOP in a way, because you're deciding on the frame to a certain extent, in those. But was it always directing the thing that you were reaching for?
Yeah, it was always directing. I realized early on that there are people out there that are as passionate about directing, as I am about directing, as they are about sound or about camera or about grips, and whatever clever person before me said, like, always just surround yourself with more clever and talented people than yourself. But for me, being a director is about understanding the role of everybody, and being able to know the right language to communicate the thing you want to communicate. And so by trying all this stuff out, because I've worked in camera department, I've worked as in art, I've worked as an AD, and they were all because I've acted. Like I really wanted to put myself in the shoes of these people to understand the perspective of the job and the set from the different departments. And I hope that's made me a better director. Like, I could talk to a focus puller about minimum focus and stop and all the kind of stuff, or I can talk to a dolly grip about the limitations of this, that, and the other. I'm no expert, but I've probably got enough knowledge to be dangerous, as they say. It just helps me understand in prep, how we can maximize budgets, time, because sometimes you're making these decisions way before you even got that crew or you surrounded by those people. You're making some key decisions about, for example, or like a feature film is like, Phil, we can only afford X amount of days with the crane. So, okay, well, I know what the crane can do, and I know actually maybe I could do this in a dolly, and and you get into the kind of the granular parts of filmmaking that if I didn't understand how those things worked, then I might not get be able to serve the story in the right way, or B, be frustrated on set, not be able to get the right shot because they don't have the right bit of gear, and all that kind of practical side of filmmaking that makes the creative flow, you know?
Yeah.
So, which I love too. I'm just...
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, you know, you've got it all covered. But I always also think, you know, you've got all that planning, of course, and you're surrounding yourself by this crew that you've got this, hopefully the shorthand with, and this respect for what they do. But you've also got to be, as a director, willing to react if things don't go to plan, because it still has to be done right. The schedule isn't going to stop for anybody.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, that's an entirely different skill set. Some people have one or the other. You have to have both. You have to have all. I mean, you have to be technical. You have to be artistic. You have to be an actor's director, a technical director. I mean, it's a big skill set to have.
It's a lot, and this is what I actually get quite frustrated when people say, "Oh, I'm an actor's director," or "I'm a technical director," or you know, and it's like, well, if you're only interested in performance, then go and do theatre. Like, if you're only interested in camera, go and be a cinematographer. Like, a film director, whether it's commercials or whatever, you need to understand that all of these assets, tools, resources are all there to help you create a vision to tell a story. And if you don't, and you know, there are obviously parts of every job and every shoot and stuff which you might find more difficult than others, and then I make sure I hopefully surround myself with people that can fill that gap and help me and guide me in that way, and be open to those changes, be open to those ideas. And as you say, when crap hits the fan and you've got 12 minutes left, and I've done a lot of stuff with kids, and you know, and you run out of time with them very quickly, and you're always trying to react. But through doing all the short films and all the kind of no budget filmmaking and stuff, it's amazing that you might have all these resources and all these people and this very expensive, you know, Oscar nominated actor on set and stuff, and you're still pulling tricks out that you might have done when you were 15 in a corridor of a high school. You know, you're just trying to get the shot. I certainly see that. And I used to love doing these, you know, like the 48-hour film challenges.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you ever did any of those, because that, again, that's another amazing film score. And like that thing you said, you have to release this thing. You know, it's the momentum is there, which is a sort of a good primer for the industry itself, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. But all those things are made by kind of instinct. Like, there's no time to obsess or think. So they're a really good attack on the senses and on the skills to make decisions in the moment, usually when you're exhausted because you've not slept, especially in the edit, and you come out with a short film that hopefully you're proud of, and you go, wow, we did that sort of on instinct. So that all that skill set helps you when you get into the kind of bigger productions, I suppose, because, you know, a director really earns their money in those hours where you're losing the light, or those times when the generator's broken and you have to come up with a way of doing, you know, all the stuff that the audiences never see. That's really when, then I say, you kind of show your chops, as I suppose. Absolutely.
You're at the tip of the spear at that point. I always think, like, in my side of things, live TV, I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm amazed all of the pieces come together to make the broadcast happen sometimes. You just think sometimes, wow, if they don't pull themselves together, this is not going to happen. And all of a sudden, you're on air and everything starts to fall into place because of that experience and that instinctive kind of thing you have. You mentioned about working with actors. Obviously, casting is a massive part of a film. You know, getting the right cast is hugely important. But with actors, I know a couple, and I've spoken to them at length over dinner about their work, some theatre, some TV and film. But it always feels to me like, as a director, you have to really meet them in the middle somewhere. You have to sort of create this space that is open and freeing, but safe for them. Because, you know, there are some directors who just hide behind a monitor stack, which I can never understand. You know, you've got all of those things together, all of that time and all those resources have gone to this moment, and this is the moment you're going to shoot that scene. Your focus has to be on the actors. I'm guessing, Phil, that you're this kind of guy that's down there talking to the actors, you know, really doing what a director should be doing and being at the front line.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, I say that, you know, people watch people. That's what we're there to, you know, in a movie, essentially. If you don't get the performances or you don't get the emotional beats that tell the story, then you don't have a film. And regardless of whether it's on a crane shot or a dolly, or you're burning time trying to light things beautifully, you know, essentially, the performance should win all. And I very much approach, because the director, I'm probably hopefully not putting people off being a director, but like all the stuff we said about being a director, like one of the most important things is to set the tone on set, is people look to you to understand how this thing is going to be made. And if you do hide behind the monitor and you're scared of cast, or you don't like giving notes, or you don't feel very inclusive, or you kind of shut off, then that's the kind of show it will be. And that will I believe, feed into the performances and the actors, and you'll lose them very quickly, especially experienced actors. They're all more experienced than you are. And actually most crew are more experienced than you are, because Grips and Sparks and stuff, they're doing this day in, day out, working with numerous directors, and you might have been spending a year trying to get to this point of being on set. So I'm very aware of that, like, too. You know, experienced actors, they'll switch off. They'll go into kind of self-direct mode, like self-preservation mode. And it's very hard to pull them back, you know, from that. And so I'm very much, all about making sure that the actors are happy and comfortable, and that we're all there for them. So, and that can be really small things. I mean, there's obvious things about like crew sizes and you know, and keeping things small when something's intimate, or making sure that you don't schedule things of like big emotional scenes first, or, you know, like you're building up to stuff. There's like an art of scheduling that leans into performance that you need to think about. But just having a working relationship going in, like new actors, young actors, experienced actors alike, I always ask the question when I start, it's like, how do you like to be directed? Like, what is the language or not I can use to aid this performance? Now, I'll, you know, make sure early on in discussions that we're all on the same page in terms of tone and style and those kind of things. But if you're casting the right person, you're wanting them to bring themselves to that role. I'm not here to teach people how to act. That's not my job. Even young people, I'm not here to teach them how to act, because I'm there teaching them or line reading them something seriously gone wrong in that casting process. I'm looking to embody the character with an actor that brings them to life, and then nudge it, guide it along the road, tonally, comedically, emotionally. You know, I'm there to help them to aid that performance. So I'm very, so I'll have conversations saying, you know, do you like me to use active verbs? Do you like conversation? Do you like me to whisper notes in your ear? Do you like no? Like, everyone has a different way. And I feel it's my job to kind of, you know, be malleable, in how certain actors like to be, how certain actors like to work. And then that goes a long way for when, you know, the moments when crap does hit the fan and you're like, I just need you to stand there, look this way and look at that. Okay, great. Cut. Brilliant. Got it. And they'll be more accommodating to that, because you're being a team player.
Yes.
Especially down to like crew behavior, like, you know, making sure no one's on their phone or someone's trying to do a performance, eye lines. They're all really small things, but they really mean a lot, especially when you've stood in front of that lens and looked back at all these faces and you're trying to create a moment of truth. Like, you're trying to really access something in yourself and give that to the camera. And if there's someone over there smoking or chatting or scrolling Instagram, it's just totally disrespectful. And I get quite cross, if you can imagine. I get quite cross at that kind of thing. And that's the stuff when I get when I would probably get a bit grumpy with people if they're not respecting the actors. The job is not done just because the track is laid or the scene is lit, right? It's done when we've wrapped the scene. Yeah. And until that time, we're all here to make that moment the best for the film.
But creating that environment engenders a collaborative kind of environment anyway. The more you say to people, I need you to be with me on this, it's sort of, it's a self-perpetuating thing. Eventually, hopefully you'll be in a situation where you look back and everybody is keen on what has just happened and then want to see it back, and everyone feels involved and invested. I think that's often the problem with some of the jobs that I've worked on over the years. Yes, you might be a small cog in that production, but unless you feel like your work is valued, you don't feel like you should invest any more of your time, i.e. the track is laid, I've done my job. It's so important to make people in the team feel like they're necessary and they're vital and valued. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they genuinely are. Like,
of course,
I'm not going to lay a track by myself in the forest in 20 minutes when, because we need it for the schedule or lose the light. It's in those moments. Like, no film set is easy, but like if you got all the time in the world, all the money in the world and all the resources in the world, then anyone can pretty much do the job. But like, it's in being selective and guided and having, I suppose, the vision in inverted commas to know where to put those resources and understand that, and then create a team that, people use the term the trenches. I don't know whether that's appropriate, but like, that you are against the clock trying to achieve what feels impossible at the start of a day together. And I'd rather do that with a sense of collaboration than scream and shout at people in order to make that happen. Like I wouldn't work hard over screamed at, so why would somebody else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you a movie buff? Do you love dissecting and analyzing your favorite films? Look no further than the Projection Booth podcast. Join host Mike White and a bevy of guest experts as they explore the history, themes, and legacy of cult classics, obscure gems, and mainstream hits. Join us every week for a unique and engaging look at your favorite movies. So sit back, grab some popcorn, and tune in to the Projection Booth podcast, available on all major podcast platforms.
So you first came on my radar on 2019, I guess it was, with Star Wars Origins. I mean, you mentioned at the start of our conversation you watched my Filmumentaries, and I felt, kind of proud of myself that I knocked these things together. Then I see Star Wars Origins, and I just think, what? What? How? Like, how? Who does this guy know? Like, how many favors has he pulled in to do this? Who is he? Is he a director? Is he a? I couldn't believe what you managed to pull off with that, and I became very interested, intrigued in diving in. Of course, we met years later at Star Wars Celebration with David Whiteley and Rachel Finch and Colin Gowdy and all those folks.
Absolutely,
and had a fun evening. And I sort of wanted to pick your brains there, but now's my chance, I guess. How the hell did that come together? You'd made short films by this time. You've been doing a lot of commercials by this time. How were you afforded the time and the resources to make that project? Because it looks so epic.
Thank you. Yeah. And I was not to big myself up, but it's kind of part of the journey is that I was actually already 5 feature films in as well as a director. So, a lot of people make fan films or short films, to get that first feature. And I sort of went backwards a little bit. Almost to how I got into filmmaking in the first place by making, Matrix rip-offs and Star Wars spoofs and all this kind of stuff as a kid. it was born out of frustration, really. It was I'd done 5 feature films, I'd raised a bit of money, I'd made some films, they'd been released, and they've sold fairly well. But I was still the kind of indie British filmmaker that was making low budget movies, and I was thinking, how do I get to Star Wars? How do I get to big tentpole action adventure sci-fi? How do I get to studio level filmmaking? And the indie films, were fine and worked, and it was great to make them and everything. But they, there was always a sense of frustration because they're always done on regular budgets and not necessarily speaking to the kind of films I wanted to make. For example, I made a psychological thriller. It started out as a horror, but it's really a psychological thriller with Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, and something I wrote, and it was really about the state of cinema, and he was kind of the last projectionist in a world where everything is going digital and losing, and he was being left behind, decides to crazily take control and trap a couple inside a cinema and make his own horror film. Kind of very meta. And still to this day on Halloween, I always get loads of messages. There's always the odd podcast. People love that in terms of Robert's filmography, but I'm not the horror guy. I'm not the kind of psychological thriller guy. I was like, how do I get to these things? So, but it had some success, and the US started calling a little bit, and I started getting involved in kind of bigger productions, and I'd always get really close, even to the point of being on set in prep and then money falling out. And this up and down, it takes its toll, right? Because as I said earlier, like a lot of my career and the way I work is about passion, and I have to really love and fall in love with a story. So when you fall in love with a story enough to get to that point, and then it gets pulled away from yourself, then it breaks your heart. and then you'll, try and roll your sleeves up and get to the next one. But when that happens time after time after time, it just got to a point for my own mental health, I suppose. I was like, I need to stop chasing this for a minute. And maybe I'm just going to do commercials, and that's my lot in life, and I'll have a very nice career doing that, and that's all lovely. But then, I sort of quit, in inverted commas, like the narrative dream, essentially. And it was really my wife that probably noticed over a period of time that said, like, you're kind of a horrible whiny person right now. Can you just go and write something? I had all this creative energy that I wasn't really putting into my own writing and development and stuff. So that's when Origins came about, because I wrote it for me. I wrote it for fun. I'd always been obsessed with this whole what does a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away mean? In my head it was always like, oh, based on a true story, or like, because it's happened. And it just happened a long time ago. This kind of mythic quality of it I've always been fascinated by. So, and I've always loved fan films. And I'd always try and watch as many as I can. And when you go back to the early ones of like George Lucas in Love, or Troopers, for example.
Troopers was on my mind, yeah.
Yeah, where they took Star Wars, but subverted it in a way. They brought on a new angle that only a fan film could or would do. So that's when Origins came about. I was like, oh, hang on. What if Star Wars has a connection to Earth? And what if, there was this kind of Indiana Jones meets Star Wars world where these come together? Now, of course, from your Filmumentaries documentary and things, it's like there's all these Easter eggs in other films of like R2 and C-3PO and Indiana Jones, and obviously Yoda and E.T., and obviously Yoda in Star Wars, in the E.T.s in Star Wars. And there's like some great comics of Indiana Jones discovering Han Solo. And so it's like there's a world here that's a lot of fun. And when you go back to the spirit of the original Star Wars, the spirit of Indiana Jones, that kind of sense of adventure and fun, and sort of slightly connected to history. That's where that story came from. And then I just started showing a few people, and people were like, this is great. This is a lot of fun. What are you going to do with it? I'm like, well, nothing. It's just, it's fun. It's just something for fun. And then really, I think it was a couple of people, but especially my manager at the time said, not at the time, he's still my manager, but at the time he said, just to clarify, he said, well, I mean, if you could make a bit of this or shoot this or do something of it, then maybe it could be a good calling card. Maybe it could be the thing we're looking for. Maybe, and you know, there's a lot of things rising on YouTube, for example, like, I don't know, you saw like Pixels, you know, that became a movie, and there was a few other things breaking out of YouTube. So I thought, oh, maybe there's some legs in this. Maybe it's enough of a gimmick that people might take notice. And then never thought it would take 3.5 years and sort of every penny I had to make this film. And it just snowballed. It went from trying, you know, thinking about, oh, I'm going to shoot it in a quarry in Wales or on a beach and extend it, to being in the Sahara Desert, shooting this film with a base camp that was just crazy for a short film, just to keep people alive, essentially. And I just found all these like-minded / crazy individuals that just jumped on this train and were like, this is so fun, I want to be part of it.
Great.
And if it wasn't for, again, the commercials connections and a commercial company called Velvet that really helped me pull it together, and also a visual effects company called Flipbook, who are huge Star Wars fans, and I knew were desperate to dabble in that world, but maybe not necessarily had the opportunity, that they fully embraced it and did some beautiful visual effects in the movie. And it was the hardest thing ever done, but also kind of the easiest in a way. It kind of, yes, time, stress, money, all that stuff, but I was being driven by making a film that I knew as a fan that hopefully fans would love and embrace. And that's what I was thinking about, was making this film for the fans, and hopefully trying to deliver on a scale and a quality and a ambition that that kind of spoke to people, I suppose. Go big or go home, right? that sort of was the motto of it. Should have put it on the t-shirts.
At any point did your wife say, no, I said go and write something, not go to the Sahara Desert?
Don't make, well, no, there was many conversations about how much money was being spent on this thing. But still, you know, was again just focusing the resources of making sure I only shot exactly what I needed, and having a really clear sense of what the story should be, because that's all we could afford to shoot, essentially, or do the post on, or the visual effects, and really focus all the efforts on the screen rather than wasting anything. And yeah, it was, I never really, I think when I got nervous was when, obviously, really proud of the film. We launched it at For the Love of Sci-Fi, a convention in Manchester, and people went a bit nuts. Like it was nerve-wracking and great. And when the trailer came out, I thought I was going to get shut down like any day, because people started thinking it was a real film, like it's a real Lucasfilm thing. And we had certain bloggers and people commenting going, how dare Disney, the evil Disney, and all that nonsense that the internet loves, you know, mash up these franchises. And on the flip side, there's people going, I'm totally here for the mash up these franchises. You know, so I was nervous. I was nervous that it was obviously, personally, and obviously for the crew and the filmmakers, we were delighted that people thought it was inverted commas real, because that's what we set out
Absolutely.
to make.
Yeah.
So it was a real compliment. But then I suddenly thought, ooh, at what point does a fan film not become a fan film in the kind of zeitgeist of the internet and things? Like, what? You'd already seen it with Joseph Kahn and the whole Power Rangers IP, fascinating story of that. But that was different because that was R-rated, and there was, Power Rangers and Saban, and it was a very interesting thing about freedom of speech and fan film of fair use. And but yeah, so we were coming out going, well, I'm honouring the sort of original rules that George Lucas set out when he did the Star Wars Fan Film Awards, right? That was a real thing. So I just hoped that we weren't going to get shut down and 3.5 years of work and money would just disappear in a way that no one could see it.
I think Lucasfilm have been pretty good, though, haven't they, in recent years, just having this understanding that actually things that aren't damaging the franchise are actually doing a good thing. Because if you can create this fan base, and Steve Sansweet was a big part of creating that fan base and the conventions and the fan films and all of that stuff, then it begins to sort of feed itself. And obviously the press people still like to manage things to a certain extent, but if you've got this thing that's getting big press and it's Star Wars and it's a fan who's been inspired by these movies, and it's a great calling card for you. I mean, it's ticking. It was ticking pretty much all the boxes for you by this stage, I'm sure, when it was on the front page of every film website. I remember.
it was insane. It was insane. There was a real big, and the thing about the trailer as well is we gave nothing away. Like none of the Star Destroyer. Sorry, spoilers. None of the Star Destroyer stuff was in it. None of the big twist stuff was in it. It was really a teaser of some Indiana Jones style stuff with a lightsaber and a bit of a lightsaber fight at the end. Like, all the juice was still in the film, and I was thinking, wow, like they don't know what's coming in this film. It was amazing, and I get comments on it pretty much every day, which is always fun to read and look at. I suppose it speaks to that thing about, I suppose with previous feature films and stuff, I was maybe making films that I thought I sort of had to make in terms of like the rites of passage of being a filmmaker, and not necessarily leaning into the films that, I'll say I love, because I love, it's like choosing between my children. I obviously I love them all in different ways, but this was the first time I felt I was flexing all the muscles that I had. Because, people have said, how do you make it look like Indiana Jones? I'm like, I don't know. That's the easy bit. That's just how my brain works from watching Indiana Jones a million times when I was 12.
Absolutely.
It's the stuff that sort of came easy to me, really, based on my film education of, I suppose, Spielberg and Amblin and Lucas and Zemeckis and all these filmmakers that I adore and still to this day adore, and speak to me as a filmmaker, essentially.
And that was always your intention, wasn't it, to do these big tentpole blockbuster movies? I mean, there are some directors who like to do these small indie movies here in the UK. It feels like there are very few directors in the UK that are sort of striving to do these big, I mean, they are Hollywood, I guess, in inverted commas, movies. You're one of the few people that I know is striving to do that. And I think it's great because, we were talking earlier about those expectations, of what's this British guy doing, expecting to to be a film director for. But it's great, when I met you at that after party at the convention, I think at that point I'd found out that you were working on another feature. And was that, which one was that actually?
That would have been that. Had I just finished Prancer, or
it might have been Prancer that you just finished, and then
probably
Robin,
Prancer,
and then Robin in the Hoods was coming up, I
mean, I'm still trying to get to those big tentpole movies. Like, it's touchwood heading in the right direction, but I've still got a lot to learn, and I've still got a lot of to grow, but like the ambition is. is there and is real and almost awakened by doing. I got my mojo back, I think, doing Origins. The pandemic didn't help, but which came mere months after that film coming out, which was insane. But yeah, it definitely caught attention of studios. I definitely met some, going to meet Amberlin, for example, and sitting down and talking about films. Like I was just like, oh, I'm home. Like,
amazing.
This is insane. And then obviously the pandemic being a bit of a fly in the ointment for everybody, of course. But that definitely led on to doing Prancer with Universal, because they would never have heard of me if I hadn't have been so brazen and kind of made that short film, which again, kind of lightning a bottle. Like there was a meeting, they were talking about directors, and then I think 4 different people around that table had all seen Origins, and were like, have you seen this British guy that's made this fan film? And then they got talking about it, and then it was them going, well, I don't know whether he wants to make a Christmas movie about a girl and a reindeer, but we certainly can ask him. And obviously loving Spielberg and trying to make my own, like, very tiny bit of, like, E.T. inspired, storytelling. Prancer was kind of perfect for that. And for me, it was an opportunity to make something at a studio level with a studio. If I'd learned so much from commercials about working with agencies and clients and the kind of directing by committee, it put me in good stead for, working with studios and being able to articulate a vision clearly enough that once you got to shooting and post, there weren't any surprises. There weren't any like, oh, that's the film you're making, So I thank commercials for that, for those kind of tools of communication, I suppose, in order to make that a smooth ride. And it was a smooth ride, really. It really was. They really loved the film and kind of left me to it, really. And we're just happy with the rushes they were seeing every day. And obviously had a super experienced producer, which if she did more podcasts, I should try and get her on this, Jamie. But Rafael De Laurentiis, she did June, David Lynch's June, God rest in peace, and Backdraft, and like all these kind of movies that I'm sure have got many stories behind them. But she was amazing, amazing support, experienced hand, and we're looking to do another movie together as well. So that was a great experience. And
I guess in both your films, because that was with James Cromwell, wasn't it? Prancer.
Yes.
Yeah. High profile actor. You worked with Christopher Walken as well on a commercial. Does that, do you think, sort of hold some weight in how people perceive you as a director as well, when you've dealt with talent that is, high profile and recognizable as well? Do you think that helps?
It does help. I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, I suppose, I think the thing is about, because I'm always trying to push the level of talent in the films, because it's kind of my ammo is probably the wrong word, or it makes agents and actors feel comfortable. Like, because look, I'm not Spielberg. People probably don't know my name. They're just clicking on your podcast and going like, who is this guy, right? And so probably many agents of these famous people. So like, who is this guy? And like, oh, he's worked with X, Y, and Z. Okay, they must be in safe hands. So it has to help that process, because we're still in a world where cast are what finance movies, and cast are very much in demand, and everyone's trying to get them and stuff. So I think it definitely helps, I hate the expression, but move the needle slightly in the favor of that. And all of them, I should say, unless behind my back conversation happened, I've had great experiences and I'm still in touch with them, and of all the actors I've worked with, and we all had a great time. And I think it's because, as we said earlier, about the way I approach that performance and style, that they feel very safe and comfortable. So hopefully, it works to help further casting process as I kind of grow as a filmmaker, in order to grow into bigger budgets, bigger stories, and that'll need, even bigger talent and the crazy world, the way this industry works. And I suppose it's something that on the indie films, we always try to, aim high and try and get as big a cast as we could to make those commercials. So I feel like that's always been there in terms of kind of an ambition to try and make the film reach the biggest audience possible. There's a real power to those inverted commas names in a film that make people press play or go to the cinema. It's still a metric people use. So
I heard a horrible phrase the other day. I'm putting together a trailer for a documentary I'm working on, and one of my friends who's a BAFTA award-winning editor said, it's a great reel, guys, but you need a thumb stopper within the first 10 seconds. I was like, what's a thumb? Oh God,
thumb
you mean
stopper,
to stop somebody scrolling?
Yeah.
He said, I know, I hate it, but it is the reality of where we are now, isn't it, I guess?
Absolutely. That's why every trailer has a trailer for the trailer before the trailer. On YouTube, the pre-roll trailer for the trailer you're about to see. It's going to happen in 4 seconds, but this is some shots that hopefully make you watch after 4 seconds. Yeah. It's a crazy world that we live in and work in. But I suppose commercials, that helps. That helps design those things and have the kind of visual tools to try and keep people engaged in that way. But it's fighting the scrolling is an interesting.
Yeah, we've no longer got people sat
challenge.
in a darkened theatre and turning off their devices. Well, usually they turn them off, not always. How did Robin in the Hoods come about? Was that because it was shown on Sky over here?
Yep.
Did that go worldwide? Was there ever a theatre release in mind for that? What was the situation that got you working?
I mean,
on that
you always aim for theatrical. I mean, it doesn't change the way that I make a film. I guess it's all about the economics of it, really. I mean, in the UK, it was always going to be for Sky on a Sky Original for their platform, and then wider. I mean, we're just in the process of releases coming out in the rest of the world. So we're still selling the movie. We just sold US, and we sold lots of countries in Europe, and we're in that process of it's a film that's kind of made. It's like a hybrid of like a studio system in terms of Sky being our studio, but that's in the UK, and then elsewhere we're sort of selling it more like independent film. To reach kind of other markets. So not like Prancer, where I made it for Universal. You get that Universal globe logo at the beginning, and then they press a button and it's everywhere. It's a bit different for Robin. But the way it came about was, again, because of Origins. I mean, Stuart Benson and Paul Davidson, they wrote this script, and they... were, I think, talking about directors with the production company who was Silver Reel. And there's a wonderful script developer exec called Carol Griffiths, and she's worked with the Coen brothers, she worked with Spielberg, she's worked on so many things. So she helped develop that script to a point that then they were going out to look at directors, and Stuart and Paul found Origins. I think they found me being interviewed about Origins, actually, and thought, who is this British guy that A, wants to make commercial movies, and B, seems to have a lot to say about the state of British film? And then they found Origins and were like, wow, this is the kind of sort of Spielbergian-esque kind of spirit. Their words, I've never describe my own work as Spielbergian, that kind of sense of spirit and joy and wonder that they wanted for Robin. So I'm forever indebted to those guys for showing my work to Carol and the producers, saying, what about this guy? And, they sent me the script, and honestly, from page one, I was like, I have to do this movie. Like, the idea of a movie that straddles two worlds, of both the reality and the fantasy of these kids' imaginations, and opening with like an epic battle of kids that is kind of subverting Gladiator and Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and all these kind of things that I love. I was in by like page one, and then the script just got better and better. I know I'm like waxing lyrical about this script, but I'm was forever trying not to ruin the script as I was shooting it, because the script was so good. And then I pitched, and I don't know how many of the directors are pitching or anything like that, but I think, or I know now, like the reason why I got the job was because sort of my vision of how the fantasy world was executed was very clear. This idea that we were going to fully commit to their imagination, and not in a kind of Monty Python, like kind of low budget-esque horseshoe clock kind of version of thing. It's like, no, we need real armor. We need them on real horses. We need to like give this the Ridley Scott treatment as much as we can, which is obviously a challenge in terms of budget, but like, and time, but do that for kids the same way you would do for adults, and fully commit to it. And then the way that you transition between those worlds is very simple. It's wipes, it's jump cuts, it's kind of almost like a very in-camera approach to the way these things work. So it felt very real and grounded, and surprising when it happened. So I came up with all these references and transitions, and very inspired by, oh God, is he just effects guy on YouTube? The guy that filmed his kid around the house and then putting like lava around and he's jumping between sofas and stuff. Yeah. Just joyous stuff. Yeah. And I was showing that like how watchable, committing to the imagination of children is, and how that kind of accesses something inside ourselves as grown-ups, to hopefully make something for the whole family to enjoy. There's the nostalgia piece of us remembering what it's like to play in the woods, and also for the kids, the making a film that's very much from their point of view. It doesn't talk down to them. It's about committing to their fantasy, their imagination, and trying to deliver that on screen. So I think that angle is what got me the job, essentially, I think. And then the challenge came about how the hell you do that. But it was certainly a good pitch.
I really think you hit all of those beats you just talked about. I mean, you start off with the film, and with any film, you have to buy into the reality of the film. But there are kind of two realities quite early on, and you kind of go, oh, right, oh, and then that is subverted again later on, and but then you sort of relax into it. And it really reminded me of I kept thinking of like Explorers and Goonies and Time Bandits and all of those films that I loved watching usually on a crappy recording off the TV at the time. But it just had that real sort of heart to it that those films had, that I think is sort of lacking a little bit in films today, that are just for kids. Like you say, you don't talk down to them, and you don't have to have jokes in there that are just for the adults to keep them interested. You just pitch it to who you want to pitch it to, and it works really well. And it's a nice. I mean, I watched it with my 19-year-old, my 16-year-old, my then 9-year-old, she's now 10, and my wife, and we all had a great time watching it. And it hit everybody because it's everyone is either a kid or was a kid, so you kind of you buy into that. And I thought you did a great job. What I did think, though, rewatching it again today, was it must have been very, very difficult wrangling all those kids.
Yeah, I mean, And thank you for saying that. I mean, that's an ultimate test of the film, right? If it can work for your 19-year-old, that's high praise. Difficult age to hit. But that was the aim going in, and the films that you talked about, you know, Explorers and Goonies, and these films that I grew up watching on VHS, being my film school, like I was trying to capture just a tiny dose of those kind of movies, and that all the secret to that really is coming down to casting, like making sure those kids, those young actors, are perfect for those roles and don't give you a very superficial, very directed approach. They feel very believable. They feel very rounded. They feel like they have the agency to move and talk and be the way they want to be. You know, like that messy, when you go back and look at the Goonies, it's so messy. It's so messy, but it's wonderful. So it's trying to capture some of that unpredictability. And so when it comes to wrangling the kids, it's like, yes, I mean, it's a machine. Like, we had to have a school on set, we had to have teachers, we had to have, you know, we don't have much time in terms of working hours, especially with the lead cast. So a lot of it is trickery, you know, a lot of it is how can I get the most from, you know, the max amount of kids that are on set at any time. So you think about the battle sequences, they'd sort of be in two waves. You have your morning wave and your afternoon wave, and they may only overlap, you know, half an hour before lunch, when that's when you got the most people on set you'll ever have before they all start dropping off. So you're engineering everything to shoot closer and to kind of get wider and wider and wider. So those drone shots feel bigger, because it's not only the kids' hours, it's like they've all got, you know, handmade costumes. They've all got armory. They've all got weapons. They've all got layers. Like, just getting a busload of kids to the middle of a field, you can imagine. They all need a wee. Like, you know, it's I'm talking myself out of making the film now, and I've already made it. But you know, as long as you know that going in, and for me as a director, this is like my second. I've done a lot of commercials with kids, but this is like my second movie, you know, with kids, especially as the leads. Is that this idea of don't work with kids and animals, of which I've worked with both at the same time, I think comes from people that want too much control. And it probably goes back to what we were saying earlier about being prepared and having the plan, but then being open to the unpredictability, because that's what you want from kids. That's what you want from those performances. And also, again, setting the stage, like I say to them, like, I want to hear your ideas. I want to know whether this feels right to you. I'm not just an adult right now telling you what to do. I'm a director, you're an actor. You know, what do you think? And as soon as you talk to them at that level as actors, as soon as you give the agency to stand up and comment, you know, and be part of the process, so they're not just wheeled onto set as some kids that are told what to do and where to stand and then they're carted off again. If they're part of that process, then they give you firstly, it's joyous. And secondly, they give you so much stuff you would never have thought of, you know, as an adult trying to figure out what the viewpoint of a 12-year-old girl is, you know? And then the same thing, they rise to the occasion if you give them that, because in the same way that they know that if I shoot their ideas down, even sometimes in the moment, like you would with any other person, that they can't take offense. Like, I don't want, you know, a kid to go off and cry to their mom because I've not liked their ideas. Like, it's a two-way street, you know, and it's developing that working relationship. So when it comes to 50 kids in a field hitting each other with swords, like, if you don't patronize them and say, look, we want to do this a safe way, and we'll, you know, and we obviously have stunt people and stunt people hidden among the crowd and doing all the more, you know, contact stuff, and it's all a bit of a camera trick, but they will respect it when that whistle blows or you shout cut or stuff, no one carries on fighting or, oh, I've got a bow and arrow, let's fire an arrow, won't it be fun? Like, they stop and they respect the process because you're treating them with respect. And it's amazing how much you can get done approaching it in that way. Again, but with a solid foundation team of ADs and chaperones and costume and makeup and the whole machinery to get them to set is hopefully, sometimes it wasn't a well-oiled machine, but sometimes it was and worked very well. And other times you wanted 50, you've got 10, and you just have to roll with it. So yeah.
No, it's great. If people here in the UK have got Sky, then go and watch Robin in the Hoods. It's great. It's a great hour and what is it? An hour and 30, hour and 40?
Hour and 40, yeah.
Hour
and 40, yeah.
I mean, each of these experiences you go through, whether it's working with animals, children, action scenes, emotional scenes, whatever it is, we all learn from our experiences, obviously. But we also learn from mistakes that we make. But as a director striving for bigger and better projects, you have to sort of not let those, let's say they're lessons and maybe mistakes. You can't let them linger. You have to sort of acknowledge them and move on. I mean, you're a person that strikes me as always very motivated and always very passionate. Do you find yourself kind of having to mentally shut the door on a project once it's done? Acknowledging those lessons, but also knowing that you have to move on.
Yeah, I think. I mean, look, everyone has the voice in their head telling you that you're a pretender, that you shouldn't be here. Like someone's way better. I'd like to find a creative that doesn't think think that. So that's an ongoing battle. But the best work I've done, both either, thinking about origins. And I'm talking personally, what I think your best work is done. Whether you agree, that's up to you. That's the beauty of filmmaking. But I've always been based on an instinct for the right thing to do. And that can be either, the overriding idea of, say, Robin and committing to the imagination and that kind of thing, which, then skyrockets into the thing that people really love about the film and the reason why kids really love about the film, to making a decision in the moment that you just have to live by. And you can get in your head about these things, but usually there isn't the time. And I suppose with experience, you make enough things to realize, you know what? I've got what I need to tell the story in at this moment, in this time, the best way possible. And every filmmaker will tell you, that scene, I mean, I had a total other plan, but I only had 40 minutes left. So I came up with, and there's some stuff in Robin where in the throne room stuff, was the last thing we're shooting. And when you get to the end of a schedule with kids, sometimes then the reality sets in of actually now we need to do a lot more schooling and stuff to catch up the hours, and you might only have an actor on set, the kids on set for 20 minutes. So you're like, how do I cover this scene 20 minutes in a really interesting way? And I came up with some really interesting, like the argument scene that's like a wanna that goes around and follows Robin. That is not how I was going to do that scene. It was just came from the necessity of having to do it. So yes, there are mistakes. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are problems. But I think it's how you deal with them, to the point that I can't tell you how I was going to shoot that scene originally. And I probably would have obsessed about that shot list for a month before I filmed it. And now I can't tell you what it is without looking at it. So they grow and they become, as long as you're keeping an eye on the story, and what is needed in that moment, then everything else kind of melts away from me. It's like as long as I'm giving the audience what they need in that moment, then that's my job. As like the first audience member. I always say that that's my boss. That's who I'm trying to deliver to. the studio execs and producers and investors and all this stuff. But like in the moment on a monitor, when it's just me watching the thing live, when I move on is when I feel like I've found something, or we've made something that delivers on the promise to the audience. And that's what I'm striving to achieve, essentially.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? Did I just
You did, and you've got the job. I'm glad to say you got the job.
Thank you.
I mean, given that it's just the two of us here, Phil, what's your next project then? I mean, I'm sure you've got fingers in pies, many pies, and I know you probably can't talk about them, but are you working on something at the moment?
Yeah, there's a few things I'm attached to and working on, which probably wouldn't surprise you that a bunch of them are starring young actors, because I seem to be the guy that people send things to now for that, which is absolutely fine. But yeah, there's a sort of fantasy YA novel adaptation series that my co-writer and I are working on based on books, cool. Which is very cool. And then there's a period film that is a beautiful story based on a true story that follows like a epic sea voyage from Scotland to Hong Kong and these kids that are on this ship, and I'm learning a lot from watching Jaws and going, all the stuff that Spielberg did, I'm trying to do the opposite. So it's virtual production rather than being on the ocean, and trying to learn from the mistakes of the masters. Yes. But that's quite a very technical but very beautiful story that we're working on. There's a sci-fi thriller I've written about time travel in an interesting way that we're casting at the moment. So like, I don't know what the next film like is, but it's fun and exciting to be sort of at a stage now where all the stories and all the projects are kind of bigger and for bigger audiences and need a certain budget level to exist, to be made, and to do them justice. So yeah, but then at the mercy of the markets and casting and all the fun stuff that the producers go through. So don't know what's next, but hopefully one of those, or maybe something else that's not hit my desk yet. So that's where I am at the moment. So lots of prep, lots of pitches, lots of meetings to try and see which kind of sort of horse wins the race first, I suppose. Hopefully.
And then the really hard bit comes when you actually have to make the thing. And
well, yeah. Although, like, it always seems harder to get the thing going than it is to make it. Once you're moving, it's brilliant. There's
a momentum to it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the jigsaw puzzle it's the chicken and egg of casting and finance, and that side of it is a struggle for many filmmakers out there, I would imagine, unless they've got Tom Hanks on speed dial or something, which I don't have
yet. You need to say the word "yet" after that. There you go.
Yes.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, man. I really enjoy your work, and I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
That was my chat with director Phil Hawkins. I love how his journey just circles back to the same passions he had as a kid, telling those stories with a sense of wonder and adventure. From those early fan films to Star Wars Origins, his amazing fan film, and now Robin and the Hoods. You can see that through line in his filmmaking DNA. He's got that creative problem-solving mind. He's got that big-hearted storytelling ability. And he also loves, the cinematic spectacle and the kind of magic of cinema. If you're in the UK, Robin and the Hoods is available on Now TV and Sky. It will also be released on digital platforms in the US from August the 27th from Shout Studios. Prancer, the Christmas tale, the Christmas movie that we were talking about, is also available on Now TV and Sky, as well as on all digital platforms and even on DVD. And Star Wars Origins is available for free on YouTube. Check them out if you can. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please consider leaving a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on X at JamieSWB and as Filmumentaries on Threads, Instagram and Facebook, or just head to filmumentaries.com for more of those behind-the-scenes stories. Of course, there's also the Patreon, patreon.com/Jamie Benning. Just $12 for an entire year will get you 24 episodes. You'll get them without ads. I also sometimes upload video versions for my patrons if the interviewee is willing. So yes, there are a number of different perks you can get on there. But if you just want to support the podcast, if you just enjoy it, just $12. It's kind of the amount of money you throw away on a coffee and a muffin. But it would make the world to me because it means I could actually start to make a profit out of this thing after 5 years. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you can do so again for the next episode of the Filmumentaries podcast.
We are being